Hi again. So in this video, we're going to look at 3.4. It's equations and graphs of polynomial functions, and it is R12. So this is video. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this polynomial here, and we're going to dissect it, I guess you can say, and then we're going to sketch the graph of it. So the first thing here, it's already given to you in its factored form, and this is what we're going to use to help us do the actual graphing. So in order to figure out the roots, we set f of x equal to 0 or y equal to 0 and solve for x to get the roots. So the roots for this equation here are 2, -3, and +1. Okay, next we need to figure out the y-intercept of the function. So in order to figure out the y-intercept of the function, we are going to let x equal 0, and we're going to solve for y. Now, we could look at the unfactored form here and notice that the y-intercept is 6. So here, well, let's just write y-intercept is +6. Okay, now the degree of the function, just to summarize what we've done before, we know that it's a third degree polynomial because the highest power of x is 3. Now the leading coefficient, so that's the coefficient in front of that x cubed, is 1. So that is the leading coefficient is 1. And the end behavior, well, if we look at it, it's going to be, it's a positive function, and it also is an x cubed kind of, so we're going to look at the x cubed, and remember that it looked something like that, right? So it's going to have that kind of behavior. So what does that mean? That means that it is down in quadrant 3, and it goes up in quadrant 1. All right. So since it's positive leading coefficient, it has a positive slope. Now our zeros, we can just rewrite them. We're going to write them, I'll write them in order. And the y-intercept here is 6. And then we are going to copy our intervals or our sign diagram that we did in the previous video. So when you're making your sign diagram, just to reiterate, it's a good idea, well, put all of your numbers in order, put the roots in order. So I've got my -3, my 1, and then my 2. And let's see, where is that paper? Okay, so we did our sign diagram, and we ended up, oh, no, okay, I don't know, I lost it. It ended up being negative, positive, negative, and then positive. So I believe what we chose was we chose a -4 in here to test. We chose a 0 to test, and a 1.5 to test, and a 3 to test. Okay, so, oh, I just remembered where I put it. Here it is. Okay, so remember this over here to figure out the sign diagram? All right, so now we know that it's going to have like an upward slope in between this, in this root here, negative slope in this root, and a positive slope in that root. So we're going to take those ideas and we're going to plot all of those important points on this graph. I'm going to grab a pencil because it's always better to sketch these graphs in pencil. Okay, so I'm going to put my roots down here. So I've got my -3, I've got 1, and then I've got my 2. And I'm not perfectly to scale, but as long as I indicate what each point is, I should be okay. Over here, this is our y-intercept, that's 6. Okay, so remember from over here, I'm going to bring this back in. Okay, so I'm going to transfer these orange lines onto my graph that I'm sketching. So between here, I'm gonna kind of go this way, and here it's gonna go kind of that way, a negative slope, because I'm going from a positive to a negative, and then from here I'm going from a negative to a positive, so it's gonna end up looking like that. All right. Now this is where your artistic abilities come in, so make it look pretty. All right, so we know that our graph is going to go up in that direction somehow. And between these 2 points, there's going to be, I don't know exactly where the relative minimum is going to be. And what I mean by relative minimum is where the minimum of this part of the graph is going to end up. So you want to make a nice curve there. Then I'm going to go up and I'm going to curve and I'm going to cross through my y-intercept. Now, I don't know how far in between this point and this point my maximum is over here. This y-intercept is not the maximum. It's most likely not the maximum. So you want to kind of go up from there and then be able to come back down and then cross through this root over here. Okay, so that looks like a nice pretty graph. All right, here I'll make it less crooked for you. You want to smooth out any edges. You don't want any corners. You don't want any pointy places, and you don't want this to go off in some weird direction. So don't curve it over here again, and don't curve this going up or down. Just make sure it's fairly straight once you've come out of your root on either end. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is you hit pause, and I want you to try the next example and see how it goes from there. Okay. All right, so here's example 2. Now, this example, you have to do the actual factoring, and you have to use your savvy and your wits, I suppose, to do so. So here I've already done the factoring, and this is what I ended up with. All right, so I tested 1 to see if it would work, and it ended up giving me a 0. So I did my synthetic division here, and I found my kind of the rest of what it should be, and then I factored this, and so I've gotten everything, and I factored, and so I've got a negative. I'm stressing this negative over here, bracket x minus 1, and then I've got a bracket with x minus 4 and a bracket with x plus 1. So all of this tells me that my roots are +1, +4, and -1. Now, when I make my number line to make my sign diagram, and I'm going to bring in my sign diagram over here, I am going to make sure that I put them in order. All right, so you go from smallest to largest, just like you would in number line. And notice here that I've kind of pre-drawn my negative, which is this negative here, and then I've put in my brackets for each bracket that I have here. So if I go through and just relatively quickly, let's say I picked -2, pick 0, pick 3, and then pick 5. So these are the numbers that you're putting into each one of these brackets. Your sign diagram ends up looking like this. All right. So I've got negative, 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 positive. So for this one, this is all 4 positives, so I get a positive as my final. I've got 3 negatives and a positive, so that gives me a negative as a final. And this is this first negative over here. Don't forget that. Plus, minus, plus. So 2 negatives gives me a positive. And this ends up as negative that I start off with, and then a positive, positive, positive when I plug in x equals 5 into these brackets. All right, so that gives me the directions of, so it kind of goes that way, and then, okay, wait here. Yeah, finally over here, this is a negative. So then that gives me this, from positive to negative. Okay, so there's my sign diagram. You can transfer that into the chart. So that's what that chart looks like right here. So I've got a plus, a minus, plus and a minus. And then I'm getting my graphs set up with my roots and my y-intercept here, which is -4. Now I'm going to use my artistic abilities to finish the drawing. So right here, this is going to be from positive to negative. Sorry, positive to negative. So it goes like that, and then that, and then that. It gives me an idea of where I'm going. All right, so that is going to come down. And if you need to move the paper around, I would suggest doing that. It's makes life a little nicer. Okay, so here, this comes up, and then it goes through this root. Keep this fairly straight. Okay, and then I don't know how high it goes, so let's curve it back down. You're not required to tell us how high it goes in between the roots here unless something's specified or asked. And I was curving up a little on that end, so I decided to erase it and redraw it. Now this, make sure you come out of it and make your shape nice and sturdy. Okay, so you can see here that between here and here, so this is kind of where the y's are positive. Between your -1 and 1, this is where your y's are negative. Between the 1 and the 4, your y's are positive. And after the 4, or bigger than the 4, I should say, your y values are negative. And that follows exactly our sign diagram over here. Okay, so good luck doing some questions. In the next video, I'm going to have a look at the multiplicity of polynomials.